so you can have human verifications going on. Yes, so this is just a quick summary between these two terminologies, agent and workflow. Agent is fairly open-ended. Workflow, fairly well-defined. Agents, the agency is mid to high. Workflow, low to mid. Probabilistic. Workflow, deterministic, with a big fingers crossed. Yeah. So what agents and workflow are like if you start using Mastra, these are the two kind of main components you should get yourself familiar with first. And in this, again, in this talk, there's so many other concepts, but I won't go into them that deep right now. But if you can master agents and workflows and tools like these, just start with the fundamentals. If you can master them, then you can build pretty serious systems with Mastra already. This is also what I meant by this talk is a bit of clickbait, because you probably expected me to just go list all the Mastra features, go through all of them. But I won't do that here, because you can just do that. Go to the documentation site. They have way better get started guides than me. But also because the framework is constantly changing. So if I showed you some of the new features that they released last week, I'm not sure they will be still around in 6 months' time. So I want to make sure I teach you the concepts that I'm fairly sure you will stay for a while. So if you come off this talk and you're like, I don't really know what Mastra is, that's my fault. I take full blame. But I hope you know what these things are. Like streaming, just text, streaming MCP tools, agents, memory, workflow, control. So I want you to really learn these primitives because all these things, they exist in Mastra, in Cloud Code, in LangChain, in every other AI system that you use, you will kind of face these similar concepts. So really, today's talk, I want you to think about in these lower primitives. So these tools, again, we talked about agent, workflow, memory. Just think about a database, tools. Tools is more deterministic, like smaller chunks, like making a shell code or making an API code. MCP, all that stuff. So, and all these primitives sort of lie on the low agencies side of things, okay? And that's what agentic framework should be about. They should be built upon primitives that are on the lower side of agencies. If you see an agentic framework builds with components on the higher end of agency, like if you see a open claw framework, good luck. Yeah. But the primitives here I've talked about, agent, workflow, they are kind of they do something, but that's not enough because we still have that kind of 20% randomness. So again, what the framework does is it provides you tools around it, so you can verify, guardrail, kind of check the output, and then again, they have different names, terminologies. But again, just so I won't go into details here, but if you search, you probably come around with terminologies like guardrails, sandbox, evaluations, scores, observability. Hopefully, these names will sort of make sense, automatically. But again, if you're confused about any of them, don't worry about it now. Just do some research when you get home. But you can see that these categories of primitives are sort of they want to contain that box. They want to contain these, these other things. So you can sort of So when you start kind of again designing these frameworks, think about what's inside the box and what's outside the box, because then you can this is the action versus quality, two types of primitives, and again how you combine them, how you use them together will determine how successful your system are as well. Just a quick example here. So sandbox, hopefully that makes sense. So you can spin up a sandbox, and then inside the sandbox you do all these things. so that when you execute a tool like a shell command, any malicious script doesn't execute the rest of the system. So again, Sandbox is trying to do that job. Okay, so I guess now it's a demo time. But before I show you the demo, let's just quickly go over the just the overview first. I want to build an event recommender. So let's say, we're here because of Meetup. So I want to build a kind of assistant that I can give it a date, activity, and location, and it just goes out, does its search, and then come back and also it will look at my Google Calendar or other calendars and see what availabilities that I have, because if I'm not free this day, then I don't want it to recommend me any events that day. So yeah, so it kind of goes out, fetch events, and then kind of merge it up with my own calendar, and then suggest events, and then I will pick one, this is the human in the loop kind of level, and then it will go off, register that event on behalf of me, and then update my calendar. Again, this is the overall idea. This is the system design. But before we kind of dive in, remember that spectrum, like deterministic versus probabilistic. All these components that I just named, really only these two are probabilistic, right? Like if my input will be the same input. Meetup API, Luma API, these are API endpoints. They will return deterministic results. Google Calendar, deterministic. Update calendar, that action is also, so you see? So like when you're trying to build like a system, again, not the whole, like the only 20% of the system should be probabilistic. And so again, so really like when you kind of jump into these like agentic frameworks, think about, just start like with simple graph like this, and then trying to identify which part is actually random and which parts are not. And then it's really like these parts that are truly probabilistic, then you start putting more controls and guardrails around them. But every other part, that's just like, mostly old school programming, Okay, yeah. Okay, so this is the kind of front end, and this is the back end, which is the Mastra kind of framework, the Mastra Studio that you learn. And again, on the left-hand side, you see all those sidebars, different icons. Again, that's why I say there's a lot to learn, but in this workshop, we're not gonna, I'm not gonna just go through each of them one by one. I want to teach you the high-level kind of overview first, and then if you want to dig into these features, you can do that through the Mastra documentation site. But I just want to show you, so Mastra is kind of like the back-end framework. This is the Mastra server on the back end. This is our kind of front-end UI, and yeah, I'll just kickstart the assistant first. So let's say so now here's like the first advantage of using AI kind of workflow is here I can just define any English language. I don't have to, it's not a calendar picker. I can say something like next week. And the AI, the model behind the scenes, it should know what next week means, and any events that match next week, it will codify this. Or if I want to be specific, I say this Friday, but let's say this week for now, where again I can just let's pick London first. Sorry, I'm not picking Portal right now, but I can't find much events in Portal. Yeah, but again, you see, the input box, you don't have to fetch a geolocation kind of API. You know, you don't have to be latitude, longitude. You know, so this is really like the power of building on LLMs. You know, it really comes in here. Again, what kind of activities? Yeah, I could say something like literally anything. You know, that should work. Or I can, you know, say something more like, let's say music, food. You can give it a list of activities. Again, you see, so like it opens us up so much opportunities that you just simply, well, you can do before, but if you were to build this pre-AI, you know, eras, you really have to, yeah, this is probably with like a whole feature on itself. You know, how do I put different activities there and just knows everything, right? This would be take like 6 months to build, you know, but now it just simply pass it to AI. So yeah, let's say music, food, I don't know, yeah, AI agents, because I think there are a lot of AI meetups right now, and then I'll just click find events. And so now it's like the scrapers are fetching Meetup, Luma, and it knows my Google Calendar. So, but because now it's fetching real data from Luma and Meetup, we'll let it do its thing, and we'll look at the backend for now. This might look like a lot, but trust me, it's not. So just remember that like that overview graph that I showed you earlier. You know, we have these kind of steps, and these 3 steps are being fired off in parallel right now. And eventually, you know, they work. And again, the Meetup and Luma APIs are deterministic code because I'm literally using their real APIs. You know, and so these steps will come back eventually, and then kind of merge this result into this one step. And then here, these 2 blocks are just simple conditions. Yeah, this is not AI's anything at all. I'm simply just checking, you know, the event length, and then if I did find some events, I will go to the next step, which is recommend events. If I didn't, you know, go to a different step. And again, the next one is, okay, I found some events. Now give me some recommendations, because the agent model behind the scenes, you know, it knows the activities that I want, that I prefer. It knows, you know, the week, the time, location that I want. So yeah, so then eventually you get some events and collect recommendation, and then again these 2 steps are conditional steps. So again, nothing fancy there. This one is like a nested workflows. So this is, you know, this is, so each steps in the workflow, you can have other workflows as well. So you can kind of build a nested system there, and then you can collect some result in the end. Okay, I think it paused because now it's come to the human in the loop step, where it's like asking me for what event do I prefer. And I can see that, yep, it does have a lot of AI events. This one, musical, so it probably kind of match that music and AI together. Yeah. Okay, this one is real music. Yeah, so you see, so it worked. So it went on to, and actually, we can click on these events. Yeah, we'll see these are real meetup events. Yeah, let's see if the time, April 7 p.m. Yeah, April, yeah. So it got all the informations correct. Yeah, so now if you just like pick one, and okay, so this step for now, for the demo, is actually, it's mocked. So it didn't actually update my calendar, and it didn't register on my behalf, because I don't want to, you know, actually go into that step just for this talk yet. But it's very doable. You know, if you think about all the primitives that we've built so far, you know, you can use different tools to, you know, if you are happy to let the agent control your calendar, control your personal informations, and some of these events might be paid events. You know, then might be payment system included. So you might have to give the agent your payment details. So that's why I stopped, because this is the hard part of this entire flow. The fetching API part was the easy part. So yeah, but if you are serious about building a system like this, you should be wary about those registering event stage and giving the agent your Google access stage. That's where you should be careful. And let's see. Okay, yeah, and I don't know how much time I have left. So, how much time do I have left? Okay. Yes. So I know. So I know there's not enough time to can really like go into deep. So I just want to pick one part of that system that we saw earlier. I just want to pick one example where you, as a developer, again go back to on that spectrum. Like how should you design your system? Okay. So and that one part I want to discuss is when we are fetching the the events APIs, right? How would you design that? Again, that spectrum. Just keep that spectrum. That if there's one takeaway out of this talk, just think about that spectrum. How deterministic and how probabilistic do I want this system to be? Because here I have 3 options for you. Let's start with the most deterministic one, which it is you literally hard coding the fetch, the API stuff, validate the results, and merge, the OpenAPI docs, the results. You do that just like the old school ways, which is totally doable, and you get very like fairly stable outputs, but you'd be slower. And if you wanted to add a new kind of event API endpoint, let's say Eventbrite, that's another, kind of hand-rolled API endpoints, API controls that you have to write yourself. But it is the most deterministic way, which is probably how we've been doing things so far. But let's jump to the most agentic way of doing this approach for now. Just use agents, and these agents, give them powerful tools like Playwright, MCP CLI, or like third-party scraping tools. Just give them some powerful tools and let them decide how to scrape the site and get that information. Because the agent could just like, okay, I'll open up a headful browser, click the page as if I'm a human, type in the input box, I want music, London. So just let agent take full control of that. And this is the most agentic way, but that also, the kind of outcome is a lot less determined. But the flexibility on using this approach is you can give it any website, any APIs, any kind of task, and eventually you should get it done with the right tools and stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of risk, and your system might do some unexpected things. So yeah, so it's a lot. So again, most agentic way, but quite chaotic as well. And then in the middle, which is the path I've taken, I went on Meetup and Luma APIs. I had a look at how they really work, what I should give to them, what they should return. But instead of coding these APIs myself, I've put them as prompt instructions and passed that to agents. And then I allowed the agents to execute accordingly. So it's it's like in the middle. I did spend some time to look up APIs, look up the parameters and inputs and stuff, look at if they have like rate limiting, all that stuff, and then but instead of coding the kind of that API logic, I just gave it to agents like prompts, instructions, skills, Claude MD, all that stuff. Yeah, that's why I've put it. And this way, so it's kind of lies in the middle. If I wanted to add Eventbrite, like a new event website, I have to look up, I have to do some of the manual work again. But again, at the same time, I save a lot of time writing, the API codes myself. So these are just the 3 approaches I can think of. You can probably think of others, but again, this is the decision that you have to take when you are using these agentic frameworks and trying to design systems. And And that's, and again, we might forget, you came here for the Mastra framework, but I haven't mentioned the word Mastra in ages, because it doesn't matter. Because once you dive into Mastra, you wanted to build a system like I did in the demo earlier. Once you kind of dive into Mastra, you will see it works in a similar way to Cloud Code, to all the other agents you use. Maybe something else coming along in the future. So again, really, learn what the primitives does, and learn how to how to design your system. So really, this talk I didn't spend much time to teach you what Mastra features is, but I want you to think about this deterministic versus probabilistic system design kind of mindset, because this will be the most useful thing you can probably take away from this talk. And that's it. And that's the end of my talk. QA? What do we have time for that? Yeah.
Anyone has questions for Moda? Yeah, go ahead.
Where'd you get the idea from?
I was interested in personal assistants. I think personal assistant will be a big business, or big apps coming in the future. I mean, OpenClaw is already kind of labeled as that, even though you can't sell it commercially, make a business out of it yet. But I see because when I think of agents, AI, LMs, I'm actually thinking about NLP, natural language processing. That's what really the most powerful features are. So then I start thinking, okay, and then if I want to book an event, the non-NLP way is have a drop down, pick the location, and there's only fixed locations. Pick a time. There's only, whatever that calendar inbox should be is the only options they have. But then when you switch to the NLP approach, you take advantage of English. Next week, next Friday, next February. That kind of power feature comes in. So I kind of start thinking along that way, and then that's what gave me the idea. Yeah.
So can you go back to the previous slide?
Yeah.
I have a question, thinking more like a design system way, as you're saying. So in the second way, where we use it the LLM, I gave instructions and stuff.
Yep.
Do you think if you're going to build production way today, I know that this comes with a lot of overheads of creating a deterministic programmatically fetch and stuff, but the same way we adding a cost, right, in the middle. That's I always going to be calling a LLM to make something. I know that it comes with, for example, with this more flexibility of I don't need to care that. But what do you think developers and engineers will be today, thinking how we should decide which path to take, right? Because in this case, for example, adding a cost. If we're talking about AI, that's really without great subsidiation right now. Which path you go, if we're going to production right now? Which path you was going to take? Thinking I'm having 1 million of users.
Yeah.
And I'm patching 1 million of that calls for LLM to make.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think, again, that comes down to your requirements, business requirements. So it's actually nothing to make this decision. It's nothing technical. It's not questioning, can the agents do this, or will the API code fail? It's not thinking about that. It's more thinking about, like you said, how scalable the middle approach is, how reliable it is, and how can if I go for this approach, because, and actually, it might come down to budget as well, because if you pick the most deterministic, just old school fetch codes, and if you stay within the rate limit control, that whole operation is free-ish. But the middle ones, every time you make an agent calls, the tokens and the costs start adding up. So to put this in a production system, you actually have to go back to your boss, be like, hey, how much are you willing to spend? Because if we do it slower, safer, and it's cheaper. The middle one, yeah, maybe faster, because like if they want to push out this feature in like the next 2 weeks, you probably should go for the middle approach because you get down faster, but then there's that risk of like how reliable it is. But then again, if you think about that box that I mentioned, these frameworks, they do provide tools that measure how well these kind of actions perform. So I didn't go through any of the examples here because lack of time. But when you do, you see that there are all these tools that will evaluate the performance of these agents. So even if you do use this in the production system, and if the agents start going crazy and start reporting weird results, as long as you have that box contained and evaluation traces, observability alerts, all that set up, when the agents start going rogue, you will know, and you can go back and fix it. So yeah, so I would say a lot of the production system today, they've gone for the middle approach, but with that box with all those guardrails around it, because when this go wrong, they want to know immediately first, and then find out the reason and fix it. Yeah.
I have a question regarding the second exercise that you did in there, particularly about the part that you said that you gave as a prompt to the agents how to use the APIs.
Yeah.
Based on the question that you wrote. What exactly that mean? Did you use the coding agent that execute code to read the API? Or do you reference?
Yeah. I can quickly show you. Yeah. Let's see. So yes, again, I purposely didn't want to show you too much of this code because they might change very soon. So again, I want you to learn the concepts first. But just to answer your question, yeah, what prompt did I give it to it? So here's like one prompt. This is the kind of generic scraper agent prompt. Here's where how define the models. Here's the tools you can give it. Again, tools are just like what it allowed to do. So here I allowed it to fetch URLs, and here are the instructions, and here I'm using Playwright CLI skills. So again, like I could have told you about Playwright here, but that's not necessary. Maybe there's something other tools you could use. So that's why I didn't tell you about here. But so like this is one thing I try to avoid in this talk, which is I avoided to naming terminology, like naming technologies, because they move so fast. Today I tell you, okay, use the agent, use the model with Playwright. 2 months later could be something else. So yeah, but again, the idea is the same. You give like a powerful tool that it can execute these kind of web network browser kind of jobs. And then here's like, inspect network traffic, because that's how it kind of fetches the APIs or other information from the site by looking at the network traffic. Yeah, what other things do I have? Oh, yeah, and then here's the kind of like the API specific examples. So here's for Meetup. So here's what I really meant by like I did look at the documentations for Meetup API, and I found, okay, so I need to fetch this URL. Okay, it on its request body takes these variables. Okay, so then I pass this information, and Meetup uses GraphQL. Okay, I tell Playwright to make a post request to this endpoint, pass these variables. But then these variables, again, you see latitude, longitude. I just gave it London. So it kind of the agent kind of substitutes these variables itself. Again, that's a lot faster than me coding a location lookup feature myself. And then again, kind of information that I expect. Yeah, and then that's it. Yeah. So is this the kind of thing you were looking for? Yeah. Okay. We have a question in the back. Sorry. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Just because it's
Just one thing to add to the previous question. I think that we don't need to actually choose like which one we have to, which of the three ways we need to use when we are developing like feature or anything. But we should actually think of them more like a spectrum and dependent on like what kind of feature you're building, what kind of risk you're okay to take, because you can do a mix, right? You can like have part of your system being like totally deterministic, because I don't know, that part of the system is really critical for all your customers. But some experiments, let's say like you want to experiment a new thing in a new section. Maybe time to market is way better than like doing the right way or safer way. So you better leverage like the agents and stuff. So just wanted to add that. I think that's a good thing to have in mind.
Okay. Nice. Thank you.
wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bola.
Yeah, thank you, brother. So there's like a Chinese saying, right? That learning is like sailing through to the top of a river. If you stop, you're always going back. Thank you.
Wow. Lao Ju in the house. Yeah.
So Pedro, we want like 5 seconds and do like
Let's do like a 2 to 5 minutes to stretch, and then go to the bathroom, and we'll have the second element. Okay. Pretty cool.
Well, not working. No, maybe it's not linked with.
Estás a fazer a apresentação aonde?
É, no browser.
Pode ser isso.
Tem problema não, tem problema não. Vai na mão.
Vai?
Vai na mão. Vou deixar. Vai na mão, deixa. Nada. Okay. So I already introduced myself. We can skip that. One thing I want to mention here is this talk is not hyped by AI. I know there is AI powered in the name, but it's more thinking about processes as human beings using AIs. And yeah, the thing that I was actually struck by when I thought, what could I say? Because again, coding became a commodity, and we know that, as the previous speaker said very well. It's cheap now. What is actually expensive is judgment, right? How good are the decisions we are making? And that was the main goal I want to bring here, is like how we could, for instance, for front-end developers, how we could improve experiments in this loop of teams, right? Cross teams. When we talk about product, when we talk about design, when we talk about development, how can we actually be effective and change something that was a real pain for me, at least? I don't know if you guys are going to relate, but I'll try to, well, say here in a more specific way. What? Okay. So yeah, just to give a brief thing that came to my mind when I start thinking about how AI can improve the relationships in our teams. I thought about like our relationship of development between development and design team, right? And the only thing that came to my mind, I know that AI experimentation can be very broad, and we can do a lot of stuff from end to end with all the connectors, and bringing back to the previous talk again, with MCP servers, what we can do to access, I don't know, Jira and connect stuff and have orchestration and even like governance in AI. There's a lot of stuff we can do, right? But my focus would be more in the interactions between these two teams, the handoffs between product, design, and development. And what I thought, what crossed my mind when I think about starting this was the problem that I have with all companies when I was strictly focused with front-end development, right? And this is the relationship with the design team. So we have design specs, and who never passed through this, right? Like some details that you cannot consider as source of truth, right? The design that we have a design system. They spend a lot of time there. They spend a lot of care, but we usually do not get 100% right because, well, I think as this problem encompasses, it's mainly a translation problem, because Figma, when we talk about Figma, of course, we can have other tools, but that's my experience. I've been mainly working with Figma. And Figma has its own language, right? It does not know whatever React or whatever framework you're using. Figma has like the node trees, and Figma has its own specs on how to define each frame. And this is, again, I know that AI experimentation can be a very broad in terms of process, but this is a specific topic. It's for the translation problem. And this is what I want to focus the most. Like when we think about like creating a new design, we always have like this in mind that we need to do this manual translation. And from Figma designs, right? Okay, here. Okay, this is, all right. Not looking good. Okay. No worries. And then, as I mentioned, there is a missing bridge between this communication. And in this case, specifically, I'm using what most of my experience has been about, which is React applications, right? And front-end and also hybrid applications. But what we know for sure is like most of the times, in my experience, this translation has been manual, And what I do is I always get the specs, and if it's missing something like a spacing, I just do guesswork, right? Like if the design did not do the auto layout specifically in Figma to tell how much gap I have between elements, I just do guesswork. And this mapping step is what's exactly missing between these two technologies, I would say. And okay, and then these things starts to pile up. I don't know about you, but in my experiences, I've been working a lot with experiments, close to product team, close to also design. And sometimes I remember that there was like a specific fear of piling up experiments because they were hard to track. Probably there were, well, a multitude of things that could make them fail or not produce significant data. But one of the main reasons is, like, right now, as I mentioned, code's cheap and we can do that much faster. And I think like the main goal is to how can we actually organize this in a way that we can not hand off everything to AI. That's not the goal. The goal is actually to improve the communication across teams, right? And all right. So yeah, the main goal is, right, to present a pretty recent tool, which is the Figma MCP, that can help with that and stop doing manual work. And this is very specific. It's that there is no demo related. There is a small demo, but yeah, I just recorded a video to show pretty much how the concept works, how MCPs are just like, as a speaker said, it's tools that can help us also to communicate with external models. And in this case, we're talking about Figma that can easy this translation between designs and code, right? And the main goal of this, right, now you're working. Okay. All right. So it's important to understand what actually Figma exposes. It's still not magic. It would still be whatever we would do when trying to match the designs with the components we are creating. So what Figma exposes is pretty much what we see when we go to inspect a design. It's pretty much like a CSS sheet where we get the values for each thing that we can implement. And there is like multitude of things that we can do with Figma when trying to export. I understand that this topic, it's not particular to how this magically solves an issue. There are plugins, there are things that we can do to export to certain technologies. But in this case, it's important to understand how the MCP works. It's still evolving, but the basic stuff that we can actually get out of it is like this kind of stuff, like font family, font size, font weight. And I will explain how they can be good for us in a generative way. Not only like a manual check, like the human manual check, but we start not doing this translation, and we start to do more review, right? We start to do more judgment on what can be implemented when we use the MCP. So yeah, the MCP. So the MCP, as I said, it's pretty much using Figma language. And what we are trying to do is to make those values that we extract from Figma valuable for our daily work, right? We want to have more, at least in my past experience, I wanted to have more efficiency when trying to translate those designs, specifically with experiments, because, well, they used to take more time, and we are under this wrong assumption that we know 100% of the times what the client wants, which is not true. This AI cannot replace, right? Because we do have personas, we have specific ways to measure if those features that we are actually delivering are sticking or not. And I think the most important thing that we can create, the middleman between this, it would be the constraints. Guardrails, what exactly was mentioned before, but in this case closer to our code base, where we can actually do this translation to our design system, because again, Figma does not understand whatever we do have in the code. So this is only a matter of like simplifying. It's a matter of having this translation document, like a contract, between our MCP and our code base. And of course, they are complementary. They are complementary. And to put that in practice, what that would pretty much translate in this case, for this scenario that I applied, was for the prompt, right? I could have a prompt that could pretty much do this translation from Figma to Experiment, given that I have very specific constraints for the AI. So I want a very specific work to be done whenever I paste a very specific link for a frame in Figma. And this can be created beforehand and can be also, that's the shift on our job. We start doing this manual work, but we start doing the work of actually planning, orchestrating this kind of changes and making sure they are going in the right place, and also following the best practices that we defined as a team. And this is pretty much a very, very deep summary of what can we do when we talk about like using the prompt. Like it was shown, there was like everyone's familiar how to do a prompt and how to use a prompt from a project. That would pretty much translate to we can still provide a URL for this prompt, and they can still do this translation. You can ask yourself, yeah, that would still happen if you do not have the prompt. Yes, but this is again one of the things that can boost our productivity, since we do have constraints in our project, right? AI cannot be non-deterministic with everything. We do have systems, we do have requirements, and we want them to be followed even when doing a simple translation, even if it's from a screenshot or whatever. And the goal here is to actually reduce this overhead when it becomes, when we're talking about the handoffs. So yeah, the idea is we want to make the design the source of truth. And if you think about it, it does make sense because, well, we're front-enders. We try to translate whatever designers do, and not like each one doing, you know, your work and doing like one pushing the rope for one side and the other. We want to make the design the source of truth. And if you think, and actually, like, if you had that experience, you might question yourself like I did as well. But yeah, what if the designs are inconsistent, right? If they cannot be the source of truth if they are inconsistent. That's where I think this is actually even more powerful, because this will amplify this inconsistency and will, well, if the team are working together, which most of the teams are now using siloed AIs, right? Everyone can improve this. So in a way, it's more an idea, a concept that I think that it's worth trying. And yeah, it's much more than that. Just a quick details, like as I said. And these constraints can also be broader, right? For instance, we cannot only have the experiment, but we can also add like variants on this guided documentation for the AI. We can have variants. We can tell it every component from a variant or from an experiment has to be properly tracked. If not tracked, you have to ask the customer or the user what he wants to track. So all of these can be in one prompt. The whole goal is like have one prompt, the design URL, and then you have the variant of your component and you can experiment away. That's the main goal of this. And I have a small demo, very small because I didn't have much time. I actually did have very little to no time. But yeah, what I will show here, display pretty much, it's what I try to explain, but visually. And it has a lot of AI thinking in the middle, because yeah, we don't do the thinking anymore. And yeah, I'll try to explain the document, which can be created like beforehand with your team. There are other things in this repo that, again, I think everyone using AI will start to understand that we need documentation, we need to understand our repository, we need to understand our context, and we need to make sure that we actually provide the same context to AI. So things can be more precise. And actually in this demo, it's one proof, because I'm not a designer, it's one proof of the inconsistency I told. Like these Figma designs, I did not use auto layout, I did not use proper spacing. So it tried to get the closest possible from the URL link that I copy. But when it translated to Tailwind, in this case, on this project, I'm using React with Tailwind. When it translated to the tokens that Tailwind had, it tried to approach very, very closely, but not 100%. So it's not perfect, and that would flag it to, hey, we need to improve our design specs and make sure that we're using proper design system for that. Yeah, it takes a while, as anything with AI. But yeah, let me just get the bits here. So pretty much this is dividing in like what this video shows. It's like the base component from Figma, which is the variant that I want to test it. Then we call this one prompt with the URL. And in the end, we have like shippable code. What is shippable? It's tested, it's tracked, and of course, human has to verify it to make sure that it's actually working. So what I do, I go to a dummy feature flag that I created and try to check, okay, the variant is working. The AI understood the job and actually created the variant under the feature flag where I can actually control it. And this is the baseline. These are the tests. And then when I switch the flag, you will be able to see the variant that I copy from Figma. Okay, it's showing the tracking system as well. It understood all the constraints that the constraint document is very important here. So us as the experienced humans in the loop, we want to make sure that AI can understand those commands and actually follow our patterns. So right now I switch the flag on and I have the variant created from the Figma designs. And yeah, this is, of course, not 100% solving this translation issue. It's much more than that. We also need to have contracts, for instance, for experiments. This talk was supposed to be way longer because we can still include product in the loop. For experiments, we need to have hypothesis. We need to have proper data and metrics where we fail, where we have succeeded. So this can also include the product team in the loop. And to quickly explain what happened more deeply, it's pretty much this. Even after that generation, AI kept on generating the tests, asking me if I want to run the test. It ran the test for me. So I understand 100%, not only the visual cues that everything worked fine, but also I have like following the guideline, what actually I wanted if it was implemented. Of course, it's a lot of words in the end of it, so it's not that good to show. But the main goal, the main idea, I think you got it. It's to shorten this relationship between our development, front-end development, and the designs. And well, there were more topics about it, but I stopped there. And yeah, as I mentioned, it's simple as, not that simple, of course, but it is simple as just adding to this document. I also need you to test it. Of course, there are guidelines. For instance, in this document specifically, I also had the contracts that I need for the experiment. So let's say I created a contract with product, and product say, hey, these are the acceptance criteria. I need, these are the success metrics. And I also try to tie this down not only with the testing, but also with the documentation to make sure that, for instance, if AI were to produce this code to me, I want to be detached, I want to be documented, and also to have a decision card after to make sure that, of course, the experiment has ended. And this was the actually update in our design based on the metrics and whatever we defined with product in the loop. So yeah, pretty much what changes in our daily basis if we were to actually implement this, it's not only, it is pretty tricky because again, it requires human interaction, but after we have the mapping of the tokens, of course, I'm not excluding design systems. I'm not excluding having proper properties in Figma. This would all help. But the main goal of this was actually to make more effective decisions. We're talking about experiments. I'm talking about teams actually doing A/B testing, which needs to pretty much be tied to a time frame and have explicit metrics in order to not go on. And this would help us to actually not pile up these kind of experiments and have an automated way of checking if they are healthy or not. That's the main goal of this. And then, yeah, as I mentioned, it's all one piece of in the human interaction, in the cross-team collaboration. But well, the output, what we want to check in this, what we want to use our judgment to, is actually to cover the cases that we would do anyway manually. So this cuts time, right? We'll let AI cook for, I don't know, 5 minutes. And this cut time, we can actually run multiple experiments, not only one. We can have variant A, variant B, variant C, and, well, define a contract with product and do that way faster than we would before. Of course, I'm not talking about whole pages. That would be way more tricky to test. But for this case specifically, where we have minor variations to some of these front-end topics that we usually have and we want to improve, this would pretty much be the summary of what we can do to make it faster, right? To make it more effective, I would say. I don't know other tools. I also don't know, well, we are trying actively to improve those relationships by building processes and putting AI in the middle. But, well, it's a work in progress. Teams work differently. Still, there is a silo that we need to break when we talk. Like, this pain was still real before AI, right? Like, whatever we try to translate Figma design, wherever we try to fight our way through understanding the designer mind, this was always there. And how we can actually close this relationship, that's, well, one proposal. Not exactly the solution, but one proposal. And yeah, so that's the pretty much summary of what I try to present here. We want to actually not only have consistent generation between experiments, but we also want to avoid deviations when we're talking about implementation of multiple experiments, which actually I've been through that and it's not pleasant. You lose track of data. There is no, since it's an experiment, there's no pattern, and each developer uses its own magic CSS or Tailwind to do stuff. And in this way, at least we can provide rules to the AI, and those rules will be followed for each prompt. So in a team, in a broader team, where there are those relationships, the engineers would pretty much working in syntony to avoid rework in the future. And yeah, the most important thing to me, it would be that also happened in the past. I want to point out, it's like when we're actually missing event data, that was actually required for those experiments to know if they failed or they succeeded. So this could also be in the contract, the documentation we provide to AI, And that would definitely not be managed by us. And ideally, we would have everything, because an experiment can turn very useless if it's like running from 1 month and we don't have the exact data to prove if it was successful or not, depending on what we want to measure, right? So this, we put AI in the loop. I think that would also improve because it avoids the human error, but still it needs us to actually check and do the validations. So yeah, more of the same thing here. Just summarizing up. These things that I showed right now, they're not, well, they're not like groundbreaking news for anyone. I think this is part of our daily jobs, and it's more of a brain tease on how can we improve our lives as front ends inside those companies. So pretty much that's all I got. If you guys have any questions, we can go. Feel free. I think everyone's hungry, right?
More than a question, it's an observation. The prompt you gave looks a lot like a skill that you could build.
Yes, it could be. It could be.
You could build a skill,
Yeah.
tell it like, yeah, the URL is here, and then you can share the skill with all your team, so that, and everyone follows that. And it looks a lot like that.
Yeah.
So it's just
So everything, in this case, I'm using Copilot.
Yeah.
So everything under the Copilot, not Copilot, the GitHub folder is shareable, right? We can also share agents, we can also share prompts. So that's actually one way to do it. There is multiple, like you mentioned, like we can build a custom skill that could also handle that. And that would be actually pretty good as well to
I'm saying that
use it.
because I'm seeing even more skills coming out recently.
Yes.
With like NPX, Versal as like a skill finder.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point.
Can I ask a question? So I'm someone that works with Storybook, and I was wondering how you see the existing developer tooling for like design systems, like interacting with this kind of tooling. Because, for example, at Storybook, we released the Storybook MCP recently as well, and there's a lot of work going on there to produce like skills and all these kind of things for Storybook. And I feel like it could be like quite a close like link there between what you're trying to do here and with the Figma MCP and like Storybook MCP.
Yeah.
Have you considered experimenting with tools like Storybook together with your workflow?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point, because what I mentioned was when I thought about it, we are actively thinking about this in our team, and when we thought about this, there is like these gaps that we need to fill between product and design, and of course this is only a very ad hoc example for the sake of the talk about Figma MCPs, right? But of course, this can integrate with anything. Like I think we actually have a POC, for instance, to product. Whenever they create a ticket, we can also pull this ticket. We can create branches. We can automate these workflows that needed review from our part. But this is also like part of a broader and involves cross-team initiatives. But for our goal in front end, of course, we can integrate with, like I did, like not only there is no, I forgot to mention, but there's not only Figma there playing, there is also accessibility issues going on there to make sure that we're not, we're checking for accessibility whenever we're producing variants. So anything, any tool that you can imagine that can call another tool, it's possible. Like it is a prompt, it could be multiple skills. It's up to you, and it could be an agent orchestrating this as well. It's as you mentioned very well, it's a workflow that you need to create for your code base, for your projects, and make sure that it works whatever you use. It doesn't matter. That's why Figma, it's because it's my reality. Like really, I was trying to wrap my head around like how we can improve that, and that's like the cool topic. But this could be way longer. Like this talk could encompass almost everything we use in our daily basis, exactly with the same approach.
Can I just?
Of course.
One is a follow-up for another. To use the Figma
experimentally the problem, right?
I'm sorry? Sorry?
To use the Figma MCP, I think you need the Figma seed.
Yes.
For problem. So
Yeah.
my question is, if you don't have it, how you go about to like try to replicate the Figma designs with AI?
What we can do, you can still, what does the MCP do, right? It does export the node, however Figma interprets the frames, right? You can still do with a simple screenshot. That's not the goal is not to show how to use only Figma MCP. Of course, you can connect other ways because what the Figma MCP does is actually connecting with Figma API, right? So it does not like do any other magic. It reads that specifically frame link and it connects with the API to collect the details. That's it. We do have, with the free seat, we do have, I don't know, 6, 7 MCPs call, but we also have like, this is up to each team, right? Do you want to invest on this or not? Of course, this all, when we talk about AI today, it all becomes with an investment, right? It's not like we're talking about cheap stuff or free. Everything, it's tokens, everything, there are limits, quotas. Well, this is one of the pieces that needs to be evaluated in each team. Not saying it's the bulletproof, but it would help because it would become more precise, this translation, right? We can actually translate those values to our design system in our code, not only like CSS, random CSS, but our design system in our code, and actually make these experiments, in this case for A/B testing, way faster, right? Very fast.
Yeah, because with a screenshot, you get like a little bit of
Yes.
gap between
Yeah.
colors, fonts,
Yeah.
like borders, and
Yeah.
stuff like that. That's why I was asking.
Yes. And that would increase the overhead in our review, right? Because, well, we still need to review this. That's not like I'm going to do like experiment, well, put this comment there and then it's done. No, we still need to review it. It's not 100% precise because it depends on the complexity of the component as well. I did not test thoroughly, but I can guarantee to you if like it's a very complex page, it would have a few things that we need to review because again, it depends on the specs as well.
You have like something with mask groups and stuff like that. It's not going to do very well.
So yeah. Okay, right?
Yeah. Thank you again, Pedro.
Thank you. Que calor.
Os dois?
Podes pegar aqui para mim essa coisa.
Desculpa, que é isto?
Assim, obrigado. Eu não quero levar isso, eu garanto.
Com licença.
Obrigado. Muito obrigado.
So guys, that's it for today. Thank you very much for coming. Very interesting talks. Of course, AI is there, and every day Anthropic launches something new. So it's great to see that we have the community to talk about it and try to feel a little less FOMO. So yeah, that's it. Thank you. Let's eat.
Mano, a gente devia literalmente estar a publicar.
A gente já tem várias coisas.
A gente devia publicar sempre que há um tempo.